What could possibly make a billionaire stop in his tracks in the middle of a glittering conference hall filled with chandeliers and crystal glasses? Not $1 million contract, not a politician or a superstar, but rather a sudden voice from a janitor holding a mop. At the Pacific Horizon Resort, where international business leaders were preparing to sign a historic agreement, Maya Thompson committed the ultimate taboo, answering a phone call right in the middle of her shift. But instead of a mumbled apology, the entire hall froze when they heard her respond in fluent Dutch, a language almost no one expected to hear in that place. For a few suspended seconds, the world seemed to hold its breath. Manager Linda Harris turned purple with rage, ready to unleash her fury. But standing right behind Maya was Victor Langford, the reclusive billionaire owner of the entire resort chain. And the look in his eyes was not anger, but astonishment. No one in the hall knew that this seemingly trivial phone call would soon expose a long-standing system of fraud and discrimination and transform an invisible janitor into the woman who would change the entire hotel industry. The San Diego Sea at dusk spread out like a massive silver mirror. From the ground floor of the Pacific Horizon Resort, the international conference room stood tall with glass walls that reflected every ripple of ocean-tinged orange by the sunset. The atmosphere there always resembled a performance: pressed suits, dark ties, elegant laughter blending with the clink of crystal glasses. A space where every detail, from the faint sandalwood scent to the way staff bowed, was carefully designed to radiate perfection. Amidst all that perfection, Maya Thompson bent down, mop in hand, diligently scrubbing a red wine stain off the marble floor. People could walk past her without ever remembering her face, seeing only the gray uniform and the tiny name tag pinned to her chest. They had no idea that beneath that uniform was a mind once praised at UCLA, a woman who had once dreamed of becoming a linguistics lecturer, but for the last 6 years, that dream had been locked away in damp cleaning closets and endless night shifts. Her phone buzzed inside her pocket, faint but enough to make Maya's heart pound. The screen lit up with a name she could hardly believe: University of Utrecht International Programs. 6 times before, her scholarship applications had been flatly rejected. This time, if the call was real, it could be the only key to reopening a door that had been shut to her for nearly a decade. Maya glanced around. Linda Harris, her manager, was nowhere in sight, but in her head echoed Linda's familiar bark. Absolutely no phones on shift, especially in the lobby. She bit her lip, then quickly slipped behind a marble column carved with wave patterns. One deep breath. She pressed answer. "Mevrouw Thompson?" A man's voice rang out, clear and precise. Dutch. "This is Professor Vanderholt from Utrecht University. I'm calling regarding your application." Without hesitation, Maya replied in fluent Dutch, her voice warm and steady, as if she had been waiting her whole life to speak it aloud. Words flowed effortlessly. Motiverende brief motivation letter, Internationale Linguistique International Linguistics Program. She explained the mishap. Perhaps her documents had been lost in the mail. Her tone was deliberate, gentle but firm, carrying both the urgency of a plea and the conviction of someone proving her worth. And suddenly, silence, not from the other end of the line, from the entire space around her. Maya lifted her head. Just a few steps away stood 2 figures. One Linda Harris, her manager, face flushed crimson with fury. The other a tall man with salt and pepper hair, steel-gray eyes glowing with astonishment. Victor Langford, owner of the Pacific Horizon chain, the reclusive billionaire who had graced the cover of Forbes. Maya froze. Her hands trembled as she managed to finish a short phrase in Dutch. Ik bel je later terug. I'll call you back later, before hurriedly ending the call. The silence broke only with the sound of her own ragged breathing. But before she could say anything, Linda's voice tore through the air. Thompson! Office. Now her footsteps felt unbearably heavy. Maya felt the stares of her co-workers. Pity, scorn, smug satisfaction. Each glance was like an invisible blade. In her mind rang one bitter thought. 29 years old, and to them I'm still just the janitor who knows useless languages. The walk down to the basement felt endless. The acrid smell of cleaning chemicals filled the flickering fluorescent light. Linda stood there, arms crossed like a prison guard, spitting out each word. You just embarrassed me in front of the owner. A phone call in the lobby. And in whatever language that was? Maya swallowed hard. Dutch. The answer slipped out reflexively, and she instantly regretted it. Linda's eyes bulged. I don't care what it was. What I care about is that Mr. Langford just saw one of my janitors slacking off on the job. The result? For the next 3 months, you'll be on restroom duty in the conference wing. That's where you can practice all the languages you want without humiliating this hotel. Maya said nothing. Her heart sank like a stone to the ocean floor. She knew what conference restrooms meant. Double shifts, no extra pay, scrubbing the stench after every banquet. It was hell, Linda's way of crushing anyone who dared defy her. That night, Maya sat in the cramped apartment she shared with 2 night shift nurses. On the wall hung her peeling UCLA diploma beside yellowed international certificates. She broke down, silent tears falling onto her scholarship file. Outside the window, the Pacific waves still surged, reminding her of a dream slowly drowning. But Maya didn't know. In that very moment of despair, elsewhere in the resort, Victor Langford sat in his ocean-facing office, replaying the determined look in the janitor's eyes as she spoke Dutch. And he had just ordered HR, "Tomorrow bring her to my office. I want to know why a woman fluent in 6 languages is trapped in a maid's uniform in my hotel." Night fell over San Diego. Outside, the sea kept whispering, but beneath it, a tide was beginning to rise, ready to sweep away the invisible walls of Pacific Horizon Resort. The next morning, San Diego woke beneath a pale sunlight. The sea still ebbed and flowed, but inside Maya Thompson's chest raged a storm. She arrived earlier than usual, uniform crisp, hair tied in a neat bun. The punishment of conference restroom duty still hung over her like a sentence. All she wanted was to finish her shift quietly, cause no trouble, and avoid more scars. But the moment she stepped into the lobby, Jennifer, the head receptionist, called out from behind the front desk, "Maya, HR wants to see you." Immediately, Maya's heart sank. This was it, the termination order. The elevator carried her upward, each number that lit up on the panel carved into her chest like a blade. She had never gone higher than the 10th floor, the farthest staff were usually allowed. Yet today, the elevator rose all the way to the 28th floor, the executive offices. Forbidden ground for janitors. The doors slid open. A jade green carpet stretched down the hallway, silent and cold. Executives in gray suits discussed million-dollar deals without even glancing at the woman in the gray janitor uniform. Maya clenched her fists, feeling herself shrink, invisible again. At the end of the corridor was HR. The director, a woman with graying hair, looked up at Maya, then pointed, "Sit down. Mr. Langford wants to see you." "Now, Victor Langford." The name dropped like a stone into her stomach. Not Linda, not HR, the owner himself. The heavy mahogany doors opened. Victor's office was so vast it could have contained Maya's entire apartment. Glass walls framed a sweeping view of the blue ocean. A polished desk stood neatly organized with files. The air carried the scent of leather and oak worlds away from the sharp sting of bleach in the basement. Victor Langford stood tall, his tailored navy suit flawless. His hair was silvered, his gray eyes cool yet lit with something unreadable. Not anger, but curiosity. "You're Maya Thompson." His voice was low and steady. Yes, sir." He nodded slightly, then opened a file on his desk. Maya froze. On the cover it read clearly, "Thompson, Maya, UCLA Linguistics." Inside lay everything, her transcripts, recommendation letters, even all 12 internal transfer requests she had ever submitted. Dutch, French, Spanish, Mandarin, correct? And Italian as well. "Yes, sir, graduated UCLA with honors. 6 years cleaning rooms at my resort. Can you explain this?" The question cut deep. Maya lifted her gaze and found not mockery, but genuine interest in his eyes. She drew in a steady breath. "I submitted 47 applications to the international department, sir, and 12 internal transfer requests. Every single one was rejected. The signatures of rejection came from manager Linda Harris and regional director Robert Kane. I was never granted an interview. I was simply ignored." Victor fell silent, his gray eyes narrowing. He jotted the 2 names quickly in his leather notebook. "Robert Kane. Linda Harris," he repeated slowly. "Strange. Kane often complains about a shortage of multilingual staff for conferences. And yet your file sat right here." Maya bit her lip. 6 years of humiliation came flooding back. She remembered nights spent awake translating documents to sharpen her skills, nights standing silently outside conference rooms, mop in hand, listening to the languages she loved spoken inside while she was kept at the door. "I apologize if I embarrassed the resort yesterday," Maya said, her voice catching. "But that call was from Utrecht University. I've been pursuing that scholarship for 6 years, and I couldn't miss it." Silence hung heavy. Then, unexpectedly, the corners of Victor's mouth curved faintly. "You didn't embarrass the resort, Maya. You embarrassed me. I own the leading chain of oceanfront hotels, yet I let a talent like you carry a mop. That is unacceptable." Maya's eyes widened. Her heart pounded wildly. She wasn't sure she had heard correctly. Victor closed the file, leaning back in his chair. "Tomorrow, the Dutch-Chinese summit begins here. We spend tens of thousands on translation services, and yet the results are unreliable. I need someone who speaks both languages fluently and understands the cultural nuances. I want you to serve as acting international coordinator. Salary, $5,200 a week starting today." For a moment, Maya thought she had misheard. $5,200, a sum greater than 3 months of janitor wages. "Me? Sir, there must be better candidates." "No," Victor cut her off. "I heard you're Dutch. Like a native, I read your file. I know you are capable. And more importantly, I trust you. I also believe something is rotten in my system. You will help me uncover it." The air between them stretched taut as a bowstring. Maya felt as if she were dreaming. Victor rose, extending his hand. "This is not a favor. This is responsibility. Do you accept?" Maya stared at that hand. 6 years buried, 6 years of silent tears, 6 years of rejection, all converged into this moment. She swallowed hard, then placed her hand in his. "I accept." The handshake was firm, a contract unspoken. When she stepped out of the elevator, Maya carried a new staff badge in her hand. International Relations Coordinator, temporary assignment. The glossy card gleamed, a stark contrast to the faded janitor name tag she once wore. Crossing the lobby, she ran into Linda Harris. The manager froze, her eyes darting to the badge. Maya, what are you doing on this floor? No uniform? No mop? Maya smiled, her voice calm but resolute. Working. Under direct orders from Mr. Langford. My new title, International Coordinator. Linda's face drained of color, her lips moving soundlessly. Maya nodded slightly, then walked past, leaving behind a silence as heavy as an invisible slap. In that moment, Maya understood. Her path had veered into a direction neither she nor anyone else had ever dared imagine. The next morning, the Pacific Ocean shimmered turquoise. From the glass walls on the 28th floor, Maya Thompson looked down at the stretch of sand, still caught between dream and reality. On her chest hung the new badge, International Relations Coordinator, temporary. A small card, yet it carried the weight of snapping the chains that had bound her for 6 long years. She entered the VIP preparation room for the Dutch-Chinese summit. No mop, no stinging smell of bleach, only polished glass tables, brand new laptops, and thick bilingual binders. Staff rushed back and forth with hurried voices while Maya sat down and opened the files. The first pages in Dutch were fine, her eyes scanning quickly with ease. But when she reached the Mandarin section, her heart sank. A bold headline read, Bijzee de Welijkheid, the white future of cooperation. Maya frowned. In Western culture, white signified purity. But in Chinese culture, white carried connotations of mourning and death. To place such a phrase on a contract was tantamount to declaring, this cooperation will die young. She flipped further. A welcome note had been mistranslated into, we warmly invite you to the funeral of our friendship. Maya's spine tingled. This wasn't a small error. It was a diplomatic disaster waiting to explode. She pulled out a red pen, correcting each word, changing even the slide color palette from stark white to jade green, a shade tied to prosperity and harmony in Asia. Her hand moved swiftly, her mind alive again with memories of UCLA lectures and long nights translating ancient and modern texts. Just then, a voice came from the doorway. How do you know it's wrong? Maya startled. Victor Langford stood there, arms folded, gray eyes sharp but curious. Sir, this translation uses correct words but the wrong context. In Chinese culture, the word white in political contracts is an omen. The translator knew the language but not the culture. Victor stepped closer, flipping through her corrected version. Robert Kane told me this was top-tier work, purchased from the best agency. Maya drew a deep breath. He's been deceived. Or he allowed it. Her words cut like a blade. Victor's eyes narrowed. He didn't argue. He only gave a faint nod, motioning for Maya to continue her work. That afternoon, leaving the VIP room, Maya turned into the hallway and unexpectedly ran into Elena Cruz, a new HR associate who had joined 3 months earlier. Elena grabbed Maya's hand, lowering her voice. Finally, I get to meet you. I read your file when I started. I couldn't believe someone with a UCLA degree, 6 languages, was stuck in housekeeping. Maya blinked, stunned. Elena quickly continued, I tried asking about you. But when I mentioned Robert Kane, he brushed it off, and Linda said you were not a cultural fit. I suspect they blocked you on purpose. Maya felt a spark in the darkness. For the first time, someone confirmed that her 6 years of rejection had not been imagination. Elena, I just found critical errors in the summit translations. They could cause a crisis if left uncorrected. I need to trace the source of this service. I'll help you. Elena nodded firmly. You're not alone. That evening, Maya stayed late in the conference room. The slides were corrected, the documents reprinted. She leaned back in her chair, exhausted but burning with conviction. She had never felt she belonged anywhere more than she did now. But her renewed confidence didn't last long. A shadow appeared at the doorway. Robert Kane, the regional director, walked in. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Maya, isn't it? I hear you'll be supporting the summit. Quite unexpected. Thank you, sir, Maya replied curtly. I hear you're fluent in Mandarin. I'm glad for you. But remember, the translations have already been vetted. Don't get overconfident. One wrong word, and you will take the blame. His gaze swept over the pile of corrected files, a flicker of displeasure crossing his face. Maya understood instantly this man wasn't careless. He knew something was being threatened. The door shut behind him, leaving Maya alone with the distant roar of waves. She placed a hand on the stack of corrected documents and whispered a vow. No one will bury the truth again. The next morning, the summit began. Guests from the Netherlands and China filled the room, suits sharp, camera flashes bursting. Maya, wearing a borrowed HR suit, walked the hall transformed. No one recognized her as the janitor who held a mop just the day before. She moved between tables, interpreting on the spot, switching seamlessly. Dutch to Mandarin, Mandarin to English. Every nod, every handshake went smoothly. International guests smiled, scribbled notes, exchanged cards. At the back of the room, Victor Langford watched silently. He saw how Maya used metaphors when Chinese guests struggled with intellectual property. He saw how she tossed in Dutch idioms that made their delegates laugh and nod in agreement. He saw a woman turning tension into harmony with nothing more than language. During a break, a gray-haired Dutch businessman approached Maya, eyes alight. "Excuse me, are you Maya Thompson? I once read your paper on linguistic variation in international business in applied linguistics. I even cited it in 2 conferences." Maya reeled. For 6 years, she had believed her graduation paper was forgotten. Yet now it stood as living proof of her true value. Other business leaders gathered, shaking her hand, asking questions. From across the room, Robert Kane's face tightened, his smile frozen. When the summit ended in applause, Maya stepped out onto the balcony facing the sea. The ocean breeze whipped through her hair, carrying both salt and freedom. Yet deep down she knew this was only the beginning. Behind those mistranslations lay a system of corruption far greater. Kane's gaze earlier, that had not been ignorance. That was concealment. And with Elena by her side, Maya swore she would dig to the very bottom. That night, the Pacific Horizon Resort was nearly silent. The International Summit had just completed its opening session without a hitch. The business leaders had left, leaving only the sound of waves outside and the cold blue glow of the grand corridors. In a small back office behind HR, Maya Thompson and Elena Cruz sat across from each other. On the table lay an open laptop, a thick stack of documents, and a tension that felt almost physical. "Are you sure about this?" Elena asked, her voice low. "I'm sure. Those mistranslations today weren't random. Someone is profiting from this. I have to find out who." Maya's eyes gleamed. Elena typed quickly into the HR system, pulling up vendor contracts, translation services. Dozens of files appeared. The payment column made them both freeze. $50,000 for a 3-day conference translation package. An absurd figure. Maya leaned closer, reading the company name, Global Lingua Solutions, LLC. Sounds impressive, but I've never heard of them in the linguistics field. Elena clicked open the company profile. Cold details appeared. Office registered in the suburbs, license only 2 years old. Legal representative, Ashley Kane. Maya's stomach dropped. The surname Kane. Her pulse raced. Elena! Ashley is Robert Kane's niece. The air seemed to harden. The puzzle pieces began to align. The next day, Maya set a trap. She sent an inquiry email from a secondary account, asking for Ashley's language certificates. The reply came quickly. A PDF titled Mandarin Certificate, Peking University. Maya frowned. She had studied in Beijing for a semester. She knew what an authentic certificate looked like. The PDF was sloppy, distorted logo, misplaced seals, a crude forgery. She printed it out, placing it beside her own original certificate from her exchange semester. Side by side, the flaws screamed obvious. This is fake, Maya exhaled. They built an entire company to siphon money while pushing people like me down to scrub floors. Elena clenched her teeth. I'll dig deeper. I have access to recruitment data. We'll see why you were rejected all these years. Late at night, the screen lit up with statistics. Over 200 multilingual applicants, most women, most people of color, were marked not a cultural fit. Meanwhile, less qualified white candidates were hired. The skew was so blatant it couldn't be denied. Maya went still. For 6 years, she had asked herself what she lacked. The truth now hit like a slap. She wasn't lacking. The system had excluded her on purpose. She remembered the pitying stares, Linda's barked line, "You're not a fit." It wasn't personal judgment. It was policy. The next morning, Maya sat once again in Victor Langford's ocean-facing office. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. "What do you have for me, Maya?" She laid the evidence before him, the vendor contracts, the forged certificate, the recruitment charts. Global Lingua Solutions, owned by Robert Kane's niece. Fake qualifications. Inflated fees, triple the market rate. Meanwhile, hundreds of applicants like me were rejected for cultural fit. Sir, this isn't error. This is systemic discrimination and corruption. Victor flipped through the pages. His face grew colder with every sheet. His fingers tapped the oak desk slowly, rhythmically. I suspected. Now I have proof. He looked up, locking eyes with her. Will you stand with me when I expose them? Know this, you'll become a target. They'll hate you more than ever. Maya inhaled deeply. In her mind flashed the peeling UCLA diploma on her wall, the nights of scrubbing marble floors, and her mother's voice. You're not invisible, they only want you to believe you are. She nodded firmly. I'll stand. That afternoon, while Maya prepared documents for the next day's session, Robert Kane himself appeared in the room. He stepped forward, his smile sharp as a blade. So you think you're winning, Maya? I built this system over 10 years. A janitor can't tear it down just because she knows a few languages. Maya held her ground, her voice calm. Not just a few, sir. 6 languages. And the truth, Kane leaned in close, whispering like a threat. Be careful. Around here, the overly curious never last long. He turned and left, leaving behind the pungent trail of his cologne and a thick cloud of menace. Maya stood still, but inside her vest pocket, a tiny recorder blinked red. She had captured every word of his threat. Night fell. Outside, the ocean roared louder than usual, as if echoing the undercurrents ready to rip apart the lies embedded in Pacific Horizon Resort. Maya knew the power game had begun, and there was no turning back. On the third morning of the summit, the San Diego sky was crystal clear, sunlight flooding into the Pacific Horizon Resort's grand lobby and glinting across the towering glass panels. Maya Thompson stood backstage, drawing in a deep breath. The jade green blazer HR had prepared for her transformed her reflection in the mirror. No longer the weary janitor clutching a mop, but a woman with focused eyes, about to step into a space she had only ever dared to watch from afar. And yet her heart pounded, her palms icy. This wasn't just an event. This was the greatest test of 6 years buried alive. As technicians carried the final binders onto the signing table, Maya's eyes flicked over them and froze. A brand new folder labeled Final Translation, Master Contract. She flipped it open. Her chest tightened. The same old errors. The headline in glaring white, by Se de Weilai Hezu, the white future of cooperation, along with a cascade of mistranslations, words laced with connotations of mourning rather than prosperity. A chill shot down her spine. This wasn't coincidence. Robert Kane had swapped out her corrected version at the last moment. No time to think. Maya grabbed the folder and raced upstairs to Victor Langford's office. Bursting in, she slammed the contract onto his desk, her voice trembling but firm. "Mr. Langford, there's a problem." This translation has been switched back, the same fatal errors. "If the Chinese delegation sees this, we'll insult them and lose the deal on the spot." Victor leafed through the pages quickly, his gray eyes narrowing. "You're certain?" Maya opened her laptop, slid in a USB, and projected the corrected slides. The screen lit up. Jade green backgrounds instead of funeral white, every phrase carefully tuned to cultural nuance. "This is the accurate version. I stand by every word." Victor stared at the slides for a long moment, then gave a sharp nod. "We go with yours. And be ready." They won't sit quietly. The conference hall blazed with lights, cameras crowding the edges. Dutch and Chinese executives sat across the table, the contracts stacked between them. Victor, Maya, and Robert Kane sat in the front row. Kane wore a polished grin, his hand resting possessively on the faulty translation. "We'll use the official certified version," he declared smoothly. But just as a Chinese executive lifted his pen to sign, Maya stood up. Her voice rang out across the hall. "Excuse me." This translation contains serious errors. It invokes death, not prosperity. "This," she gestured to the USB plugged into the screen, "is the correct version." The air froze. Heads turned. Maya projected the slides. The jade green shimmered, words flowing precise and respectful. The Chinese delegation murmured, then their lead delegate nodded firmly, speaking aloud in Mandarin. "Yes, this is the proper expression." Applause broke out from the Dutch side. One executive even rose, nodding toward Maya. Kane shot to his feet, blustering, "She's mistaken. This contract was vetted by a premier agency. She's just a new hire without authority." Maya's eyes burned as she spun toward him. "I am not just a new hire. I graduated UCLA with honors in linguistics. I am fluent in 6 languages, and my research paper has been cited at 2 international conferences. Here is the evidence." She pointed at the screen, the left side showing the flawed version, the right side her corrected one. Red markings highlighted every cultural misstep. The Dutch executives leaned in. One spoke up, "She's correct. I've read her research myself." Victor rose, his voice deep, echoing through the hall. "If not for Maya, today we would have lost everything." A random mistake can be forgiven, but a deliberate system of mistakes cannot. He turned, eyes like steel, on Kane. Robert, we'll talk after this summit. The hall erupted. Cameras whirred, journalists scribbled furiously. International delegates shook hands, smiling in relief. Kane sat rigid, sweat beading on his brow, his grin dead on his face. The summit concluded in thunderous applause, the contract signed, the cameras flashing. Maya stepped onto the balcony, wind whipping her hair, her chest heaving with both exhaustion and pride. For the first time in 6 years, she was no longer a silent shadow. Victor joined her, resting a hand lightly on her shoulder. They've seen your true ability. But this is only the beginning. Prepare yourself. We'll expose everything. Maya gazed out at the ocean, silver waves crashing endlessly against the shore. In the glow of late afternoon, she knew she had just crossed the first threshold. But the real storm was still ahead, and this time she would never back down. Night fell over San Diego, yet the 28th floor of Pacific Horizon Resort glowed bright. After the triumph of the signing, the outside world hummed with laughter and clinking glasses. But in the executive office, another storm gathered. Victor sat at his oak desk, his eyes brooding over the endless ocean. He had witnessed many plays in business, but never had his carefully built system been so deeply betrayed from within. A knock. Maya entered, blazer creased with the tension of the long day. Behind her came Elena Cruz, clutching a thick dossier. She set it on the desk, her voice shaky but fierce. "Sir, I accessed the recruitment data from the last 5 years. What we found will shock you." Victor opened the file, his eyes fixed on the numbers. The charts were damning. 83% of qualified applicants, women and people of color, had been rejected with the same vague phrase, "not a cultural fit." The signatures on every rejection, Robert Kane. The room thickened with silence. Maya's fists clenched, her voice breaking. This is what they've done for 6 years. Not just to me, to hundreds of capable people. They blocked us to protect their own. And all the while, Kane funneled over $1 million to his niece's fake translation company. Elena pulled out a printed forgery, Ashley Kane's phony Peking University certificate, along with an email confirming she had never studied there. Victor's eyes darkened. His finger tapped the desk, each beat like a countdown to a verdict. "Will you stand beside me when I bring this before the board?" he asked, his voice calm but grave. Maya lifted her head, meeting his gaze. The memories surged, the peeling UCLA diploma, the nights scrubbing floors, the countless rejections. It all ended here. She nodded, voice steady. "I'll stand with you. I've waited too long for this." Meanwhile, 1 floor below, Robert Kane paced in his office, sweat soaking his collar. He barked into his phone, "Ashley, prepare new documents. We need proof to stop them. If Langford digs further, everything collapses." On the other end, Ashley whispered, panicked. "Uncle, they may have discovered the fake certificate," Kane roared. "Shut up! No one dares cross me. That janitor can't bring us down yet." In his eyes, fear flickered. For the first time in 10 years, he was cornered. His enemy was no longer an invisible janitor. She was a woman who had stood on an international stage. And worse, she had Langford behind her. Late that night, Maya sat in her small apartment, the lamp casting yellow light on the peeling wall. She typed an email to Professor van der Holt in Utrecht. "Professor, today I stood at the Dutch-Chinese summit, not with a mop, but with a microphone and the right words. I prevented a diplomatic disaster, but I know this is only the beginning. The truth is bigger, and I will not back down." She pressed send, her eyes burning with resolve. The next morning, a company-wide notice went out. 1400 Grand Hall. Mandatory all-staff meeting. The news spread like wildfire. In the lobby, employees whispered, "They say Langford's about to do something unprecedented." The janitorial crew looked at Maya with a mix of fear and pride. Linda Harris, the housekeeping manager, tried to hold her icy composure, but her hand trembled when she saw Maya pass by, her new badge gleaming. As the hour approached, the grand hall filled to capacity, its glass walls framing the Pacific. Executives, managers, housekeepers all gathered. The tension was palpable, as though awaiting a verdict. Maya sat in the front row beside Victor, hundreds of eyes on her, curious, skeptical, dismissive, but also hopeful, especially from those who once shared her mop shifts. Inside her vest pocket, the tiny recorder still blinked red, holding Kane's every threat. Victor rose, striding to the podium. His voice carried like a bell. "Today we are not here to discuss contracts or profits. Today we speak of truth. A truth many in this room have tried to bury, and that truth will forever change. Pacific Horizon." The hall fell silent as stone, and Maya knew the real storm had arrived. That afternoon, the grand hall of Pacific Horizon Resort blazed with lights. The towering glass windows overlooked the Pacific, but no one glanced at the view. All eyes were fixed on the wooden podium where Victor Langford stood, his stance unyielding, his voice ringing deep like a bronze bell. "Today," he began, "we are not here to discuss contracts or profits. Today, we are here to confront the truth." The air thickened. Rows of employees sat stiff senior executives in tailored suits beside servers and cleaners in gray uniforms. At the back, the eyes of the janitorial crew shone toward Maya, as if they were seeing their own reflection in her. Victor gestured, and the massive screen behind him lit up. Charts and numbers glared coldly. Over the past 5 years, more than 200 qualified applicants were rejected. 83% of them were women or people of color. The repeated reason: not a cultural fit. A wave of murmurs swept the hall. Heads turned, faces shocked, whispers of outrage echoing. Victor's voice cut through again. "Meanwhile, a translation company named Global Lingua Solutions received over $1 million in contracts within just 2 years based on forged degrees. And who signed off on those contracts? Regional Director Robert Kane." The hall erupted in gasps. Internal cameras zoomed in on Kane's face, red and strained. He shot to his feet, his voice loud and desperate. "This is slander. I've served this company for 10 years with no wrongdoing. His finger stabbed toward Maya. "She's just a janitor, a bitter woman inventing lies to climb higher." Victor raised his hand, silencing him. "If this were only words, I would not bring her here. But we have evidence." Maya stood. Her pulse raced, but her voice was steady. "I am Maya Thompson. I submitted 47 internal applications, 12 transfer requests, all rejected. I hold a degree in linguistics from UCLA. I am fluent in 6 languages. And here..." She pulled from her pocket a small recorder and pressed play. Kane's voice blared through the hall, venomous and unmistakable. "Around here, the overly curious never last long." The silence that followed was crushing. Then came murmurs, then louder voices. From the back, an employee stood up shouting, "She's telling the truth." I was also rejected for not a cultural fit. Others joined in, voices rising like a tide. Victor's final words fell like iron. "Robert Kane, you betrayed my trust and the trust of every employee here. You built a system of discrimination and fraud for your own gain. As of this moment, you are suspended and will face a full investigation. Security moved in, their hands firm on Kane's shoulders. He fought, his face contorted. You'll regret this. That woman won't last a month. But as he was dragged away, his voice cracked, his defiance collapsing into desperation. Victor turned back to the podium, his tone softer now. And this is the most important truth. The person who saved us from a diplomatic disaster this week was not a senior executive. It was someone many of you only ever saw with a mop in hand. From this day forward, I appoint Maya Thompson as Global Director of Multilingual Communications. The hall exploded in applause. Some clapped reluctantly, but most struck their hands together with raw conviction. At the very back, the janitorial team stood, tears brimming, clapping until their palms turned red. Maya trembled, her entire body shaking, but her eyes shone brighter than ever. 6 years of invisibility shattered in an instant. For the first time, she was seen for who she truly was. As she stepped down from the podium, the applause still roaring, Kane was marched past her. His last glare burned with hatred. But Maya only smiled faintly, not with triumph, but with quiet certainty. She knew she hadn't just won for herself. She had won for everyone who had ever been silenced. That afternoon, the grand hall of Pacific Horizon Resort gleamed with floodlights. The soaring glass walls looked directly out to the Pacific Ocean, but no one noticed the waves. Every gaze was fixed on the wooden podium where Victor Langford now stood, his figure steady, his voice deep as a cathedral bell. Today, he said, we will not speak of contracts or profits. Today, we will speak of the truth. The air grew heavy. Hundreds of employees sat row by row, senior directors in tailored suits beside housekeeping staff in gray uniforms. At the very back, the eyes of the janitorial crew burned toward Maya, glowing with pride, as if she were the embodiment of their own hidden voices. Victor raised a hand. Behind him, the enormous screen flickered to life, graphs and statistics glaring cold. Over the last 5 years, more than 200 qualified applicants were rejected. 83% of them were women or people of color. The rejection reason was repeated again and again. Not a cultural fit, a ripple of whispers rushed through the hall. Employees turned to one another, jaws dropping, eyes furious. Victor continued. At the same time, a company called Global Lingua Solutions collected over $1 million in translation contracts in just 2 years built on forged degrees. And who approved those contracts? Regional Director Robert Kane gasps shook the room. Cameras focused on Kane, his face blotched red. He leapt to his feet, shouting, "This is a lie! I've worked here for 10 years without a single misstep. And she—" He stabbed a finger at Maya. "She's nothing but a janitor, a bitter woman inventing stories to climb up." Victor's hand cut the air, silencing him. "If this were mere talk, I would not bring her here." "But we have evidence." Maya rose. Her heart thundered, but her voice was unwavering. "I am Maya Thompson. I submitted 47 internal applications and 12 transfer requests. All were denied. I hold a UCLA degree in linguistics. I am fluent in 6 languages. And here," she pulled a small recorder from her pocket, pressing play. Kane's own voice filled the silence, harsh and threatening. "Around here, the overly curious never last long." The hall froze. Then the whispers swelled, anger rippling through the rows. From the back, an employee shot up. "She's telling the truth." "I was rejected too, with the same excuse, not a cultural fit." Others rose one after another, their voices rising into a storm. Victor's judgment fell like steel. Robert Kane, you betrayed my trust and the trust of this company. You created a system of discrimination and corruption for your own gain. Effective immediately, you are suspended and will face full investigation." Security stepped forward, gripping Kane's arms. He struggled, face twisted, shouting, "You'll all regret this. That woman won't last a month." But as they dragged him out, his voice cracked, crumbling into despair. Victor turned back to the crowd, his tone gentler now. "And here is the truth that matters most. The person who saved us from diplomatic disaster this week was not a senior executive. It was someone many of you only ever saw holding a mop. From today, I appoint Maya Thompson as Global Director of Multilingual Communications." The hall erupted. Applause thundered against the glass walls, rolling like waves. Some clapped stiffly, but most struck their hands with raw conviction. In the back row, the janitorial crew stood together, tears streaming, clapping until their palms burned red. Maya trembled as she stood beneath the lights, but her eyes glowed with a brilliance never seen before. 6 years of invisibility were shattered. For the first time, she was truly seen. As she stepped down from the podium, applause still roaring, Robert Kane was escorted past her. His final glare was venomous, but Maya only smiled softly, not out of revenge, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had won not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been silenced. After the stormy meeting, Pacific Horizon Resort felt as though it had survived an earthquake. News of Robert Kane's suspension and his humiliating escort out of the hall spread instantly, leaping beyond the resort's glass walls. That very night, financial media outlets ran bold headlines. "Corruption and discrimination at Pacific Horizon. Regional Director suspended janitor." Promoted to global leadership, the story exploded across the industry. Inside the resort, the atmosphere shifted in strange new ways. Eyes that had once skimmed over Maya without a second glance now followed her with astonishment, respect, and even hope. In the break room, the janitorial staff, those who had lived in fear and silence, gathered around her. An older man clasped her hand, eyes wet. "You spoke for us. For 6 years, none of us dared open our mouths." Maya squeezed his hand back, feeling for the first time in her life that she truly belonged. But elsewhere in the city, Robert Kane sat in his luxury apartment, now hollow and suffocating. The glow of the television painted his face with bitterness. The broadcast replayed the moment he was dragged out by security, his eyes bloodshot, his expression twisted. Beside him, Ashley clutched the forged certificate papers, her face pale. "Uncle, they'll catch me. This fake degree, they'll destroy my future." Kane barked, his voice shaking. "They should never have dared cross me. That girl, she'll pay." Yet even as he raged, the truth pressed in. His shield was gone. No board to protect him, no contracts to hide behind. For the first time in 10 years, he was utterly alone. Meanwhile, on the 28th floor, Maya stepped into her new office. Bright, spacious, opening directly onto the ocean. On the desk, a temporary nameplate gleamed. Maya Thompson, Global Director of Multilingual Communications. She sat down slowly, drawing in a breath. It all felt unreal. 6 years ago, she had scrubbed marble floors in this very building. Now she gazed out at the horizon as though the world had shifted beneath her feet. Her chest swelled not with triumph, but with a deep belief that doors were opening, not just for her, but for many others. Elena knocked and entered, carrying a fresh stack of files. "Maya, I think it's time we start." She set the binder down. On its cover, "Invisible Talents Program." Elena's eyes shone. We've identified hundreds of employees who were overlooked. The coffee server with a finance degree, the kitchen assistant who studied IT, the housekeeper with a linguistics degree like you. I want to give them a pilot chance. Maya flipped through the pages. Names, faces, qualifications hidden beneath uniforms. Her throat tightened. We'll give them the opportunity I was denied for 6 years. This is the real victory. That night, Maya sat alone in her office, city lights reflecting off the sea. She thought of her mother's words, "They may try to make you invisible, but your worth is never in their eyes." A tear slid down her cheek, but this time it was not from pain, it was release. The next day, Pacific Horizon made it official. Robert Kane was terminated. Ashley Kane and Global Lingua Solutions were under investigation for fraud and falsified degrees. Linda Harris, the housekeeping manager, was suspended pending review. Most importantly, Pacific Horizon announced the launch of the Invisible Talents Program, a new initiative founded by Maya Thompson, designed to audit personnel files and give hidden employees the opportunities they deserved. When the announcement was read aloud in the grand lobby, applause broke out. Not polite applause, but the kind that came from hearts long waiting. For the first time, people felt a different future might truly take shape. Maya stood among them, her badge gleaming, knowing her journey was far from over. But she also knew the invisible walls that once trapped her were now cracking, brick by brick. And she would lead the way for everyone who had been forced into silence. 6 months had passed since Pacific Horizon's Grand Hall erupted in that historic showdown. The glass tower in San Diego now gleamed with a different spirit. The notice board in the lobby no longer displayed only dry lists of multi-million-dollar conferences, but alongside them, new faces, employees once labeled invisible, now stepping into roles that matched their true abilities. The coffee server with a finance degree had become a cost analyst. The kitchen assistant who once tinkered with coding now managed the resort's POS systems across the chain. A janitor from Mexico who spoke 4 languages now stood proudly as an international receptionist. Maya Thompson walked into the main lobby, navy blazer crisp, her badge gleaming, Vice President, Diversity and International Relations. Staff smiled and nodded as she passed, but the moment that moved her most came from the janitorial team. They still wore their familiar uniforms, but their eyes no longer looked down. They looked at her with pride, as if every one of her steps was theirs too. On the 32nd floor in the boardroom, Victor Langford sat beside Maya. Before them, the entire executive board and regional directors joined via video. Maya clicked the remote. The screen lit up. Invisible Talents Program 6-month report. Her voice was strong, confident, yet warm. We reviewed 147 overlooked employees. 83% were women or people of color. To date, 92 have been promoted or reassigned into roles that match their skills. Translation outsourcing costs have dropped 78%. International guest satisfaction has risen 42%. And revenue from global clients has increased 15% in just 6 months. For a moment, silence held the room. Then applause broke out. Victor tilted his head, offering one of his rare smiles. This is why I invest in people. Maya, you've proven that real value isn't found in glossy resumes. It's in giving the right people the right chance. Maya nodded, her eyes glistening. For a fleeting moment, she remembered her mother's words, whispered long ago, "Don't let anyone else decide your worth." Meanwhile, Robert Kane had fallen into ruin. Headlines spread across the industry. former regional director under investigation for fraud, nepotism, fake degrees exposed. Ashley Kane was forced to repay the money her company had siphoned and was enrolled in a career rehabilitation program. Robert himself, once striding confidently through luxury halls, was now whispered about as a night shift manager at a roadside motel in Arizona, neon light casting its red glow across his weathered face. His name, once synonymous with power, was now blacklisted. Back in San Diego, Maya began holding mentoring sessions. In a small office, she listened to a young kitchen assistant talk about his dream of entering IT. A laundry worker share her love for translation. Maya smiled, taking notes, and every time she reminded them, "I once stood exactly where you are, and I sit here today only because of one small moment that changed everything." As night fell, Maya returned to her office overlooking the vast Pacific. The city glimmered, waves rolled steady against the shore. She knew the road ahead would not be easy. But she also knew this: a quiet revolution had begun, and it would not stop with Pacific Horizon. One autumn morning, golden sunlight spilled across San Diego Bay as Pacific Horizon Resort hosted a very different kind of event in its grand hall. No expensive wine glasses, no flashy advertising screens. Instead, simple rows of chairs faced a stage where a single banner hung: invisible talents, scholarships for employees and families. Maya Thompson stepped forward in a modest gray suit, her smile warm. She looked out and saw the faces of those who had once worked beside her in housekeeping, kitchens, and laundries. Their eyes were a mixture of surprise and joy. Her voice rose, clear, without a microphone. 6 years ago, I stood in this very hall with a mop in my hand. I thought I would remain invisible forever. But then, one small moment, a phone call in Dutch, changed everything. Not because I was lucky, but because I was given the chance to be seen. She paused, drawing in a deep breath, eyes glistening. My mother once told me that a person's worth is not defined by how others see them. Today, I want to make sure no one else has to wait 6 years, as I did, for their chance. She lifted a certificate high. The Invisible Talent Scholarship Fund, dedicated to employees and their children. Applause thundered. A 10-year-old girl ran up on stage, her eyes bright. She was the daughter of Rosa, the colleague who once split a sandwich with Maya during long night shifts. The girl hugged Maya tightly, whispering, "I want to study hospitality management just like you." Maya's smile and tears blended into one. At the back of the stage, Victor Langford watched silently, nodding. He understood that believing in Maya had not only saved a contract, it had opened the door to a new generation in hospitality. Business leaders who once doubted now sat in the audience, clapping without pause, witnessing real change born from one woman once cast aside. Far away, in a shabby motel room in Arizona, Robert Kane sat hunched, the television flickering. The scholarship ceremony played on the screen. His face, lined with defeat, reflected the image of the woman he once mocked as a janitor. The man who once boasted Maya would never last a month was now nothing more than a shadow left behind by a world that had moved on. Back in San Diego, when the applause softened, Maya gazed toward the ocean, her eyes shimmering in the sunset. "What matters," she said slowly, "is not how many barriers I broke through. What matters is that these doors will remain open for everyone who comes after. True justice is not just punishing those who discriminate, but building a system where talent can never again be buried." The entire hall rose to its feet, the applause rolling like ocean waves crashing against the shore. In that moment, Maya knew her journey had closed one chapter, but opened another for hundreds, even thousands, who had once been invisible. And it all began with a single phone call in Dutch, in a hotel lobby where no one expected it. Sometimes the smallest moments can overturn an entire destiny. For Maya, one phone call in Dutch lifted the curtain on 6 years of injustice. But this story is not just about one woman stepping into the light. It is a reminder that talent exists everywhere, in simple uniforms, in people society overlooks too easily. True justice is not about tearing down those who discriminate. It is about building systems where every door is open. Maya proved that a voice, once dismissed as invisible, can become the beacon that guides a whole generation. If this story made you reflect, leave a comment and share it so others too can find inspiration. And don't forget to follow this channel for more journeys of turning injustice into real change. Because who knows, maybe one small moment in your life could change the world.